Hello everybody and welcome to my channel. My name is Kaylee and today I'm going to be talking to you about my top books of 2020. So 2020 was a pretty good reading year for me. I read about 43 books. Some of them were major clunkers, so I'm not going to count that as a low number. I was really satisfied with my reading for the year. But today I'm going to be talking with you about 8, really 9, but I'm going to lump 2 together, 8 of my top books for the year. So let's go ahead and get started. All right, first up is Dune by Frank Herbert. This is science fiction. I'm not a big science fiction reader, but I thoroughly enjoyed reading this book. I was completely immersed in the world. This is the first book in a series. And I've heard it said that Dune is for science fiction, like what Lord of the Rings was for fantasy. Dune is set in a fictional galaxy that is run by an emperor, and all of the noble houses each have their own planet. So Dune is one of these planets. It is also known as Arrakis. Dune is a harsh desert planet, and its only value is really found in a certain spice called melange, which is a drug-like substance that is used frequently all across the empire. Read this if you like covert, but sometimes not so covert, warring families trying to gain control in the empire. And I would say read this also if you like Star Wars, very moody, kind of foreboding stories with a deep, dark kind of prophecy running throughout it. This is also a really great kind of anti-hero story, and also read it if you like really strange worlds and planets. All right, so the second book on my list is The Mirror and the Light by Hilary Mantel. This is actually the third and concluding book to the series. The first being Wolf Hall. This is a historical fiction about Thomas Cromwell, who was the son of a blacksmith but rose to eventually become Henry VIII's most important advisor. Read this book if you like historical fiction, if you like the Tudor period. It's not quite so romancy because our focus is on Thomas Cromwell and not Henry VIII, so it is much more about political intrigue. Hilary Mantel's writing is just second to none. She has written one of the most extraordinary historical fiction trilogies that I have ever read, and Thomas Cromwell is just one of the best characters I've ever read as well. He is witty, cutthroat, savvy, manipulative, and just a total genius. And it is also just a really great rags to riches story. So the way that Hilary Mantel just wraps up the entire series is definitely worth it. All 3 books can be a little dense, but please check out Wolf Hall if you haven't. You are in for a good time. So the next book on my list is The Book Thief by Markus Zusak. This is a historical fiction piece set in Germany during World War II. And you might be thinking that you've seen so many historical fiction books in Germany set in World War II and you don't want to read another, but this one is truly worth it, I promise you. One unique thing about The Book Thief is that the narrator is actually deaf, so you get some really unique perspectives on the way that death perceives human motivations and why we do the things that we do. In this book, we follow a young girl named Liesel who is going to live with a foster family. She has a really sweet relationship with them and with some other people in the neighborhood, and their family eventually comes to hide a Jewish man in their basement. It is a really sweet, but of course very heartbreaking tale. All right, so next up we have the 2 books that I'm going to lump together. They are the middle and concluding book in a series. I would have put the first book on this list, but I started it in 2019. So here we have the 2, but I will talk about the first one. And these books are The Well of Ascension by Brandon Sanderson and The Hero of Ages. So the first book in this series is called The Final Empire. This is a wonderful fantasy series by Brandon Sanderson. He has a really great, easy, accessible, fun writing style. So if you're new to fantasy, definitely check this series out. This is a series with multiple magic systems. The main magic system centers around the consumption of various different metals, and depending on which metal you consume, you have a different ability. Our main character that we follow is a young girl named Vin, who is an orphan on the street, and she joins a group of people who are planning to basically take down the Lord Ruler, who has controlled their lands for hundreds and hundreds of years. So the basic premise of this story is what would have happened if the Dark Lord had actually won. This is a great book if you like stories about found families. There's a really sweet almost adoptive father-daughter relationship in this. It's really great if you like heists as well. And the concluding book of the series, The Hero of Ages, just wraps up so beautifully. Brandon Sanderson is a master at tying up all of his loose ends and doing it in a way that will just simply amaze you. All right, so this next book is one that I wanted to read for a very long time, but I have always honestly just been way too intimidated to pick it up because it's not necessarily lengthier than other books that I've ever read, but it is a long one, and I knew that it was going to be a challenging read, but it was so worth it. The book I'm talking about is The Brothers Karamazov by Dostoevsky. So this is a really deeply philosophical book that touches upon all of the big questions. It talks about the existence of God, morality, and just how it is that we should live our lives. I would say at its core, it is a bit of a murder mystery. So there is a murder and a trial. There is a love triangle, quadrangle, quintangle that centers around a couple of the brothers in Brothers Karamazov, a few women, and even their father. All of the brothers are completely different, like representing just a different facet of humanity. You will possibly need to go very slow through this, but it is worth it. Don't let that intimidate you. It is frequently being called the perfect novel, and it is called that for a reason. If you're looking to read something that is set in Russia, but the idea of getting into actual Russian literature kind of terrifies you, another really great book that I read last year was A Gentleman in Moscow by Amor Towles. This is set in Russia in 1922, and it follows the life of Count Alexander Rostov for several decades of his life. In 1922, he gets in trouble for writing a poem that the Bolsheviks don't like. He's sentenced to house arrest within a upscale hotel called the Metropole, which is very close to the Kremlin, and really, it's amazing the way that he deals with this sentence. He handles it with such grace. He's a very classy, witty, smart, kind man. He loves good literature and art and food. There's, again, a very beautiful sort of adoptive father-daughter relationship in this that is very worth it. It's very sweet. It will make you laugh. It will make you cry. And Count Alexander is one of my new favorite characters of all time. Okay, this next book I would say is this is my top 2 favorite of the favorites books on this list. This was the most gorgeous book that I read in 2020, and that is Hamnet by Maggie O'Farrell. Now, I had seen this book floating around Instagram, things like that for a while, and I had read the synopsis and I heard that it was very lyrically, poetically written, and I was really excited about it. For some reason, I put off reading it for a couple months even after I bought it. I think because I just wanted to leave myself a little something to look forward to, which is silly. So when I finally read it, I was so glad that I did. I wish I had read it sooner. This is historical fiction, and it is centered around not William Shakespeare, but his wife and family. We get the name Hamnet from William Shakespeare's son, and the story follows his wife Anne Hathaway, who is also known as Agnes in the tale, and it really centers around the grief that she feels when they lose Hamnet to the plague, and it also deals with their very complicated marriage, as he is off in London frequently and she is stuck back home with their family and their extended family. And then it also kind of explores his own grief, which Agnes doesn't really get to see. Again, the writing is just so poetic and atmospheric and beautiful. If you like that kind of writing, definitely make sure that you read this book. All right, and last but not least, I read this book near the end of 2020. I was looking forward to it. I knew that I was going to love it, and it did not disappoint me. That is Rhythm of War by Brandon Sanderson. This is the 4th book of 5 in an epic fantasy series, the first book being The Way of Kings. Now, The Rhythm of War was very excellent. The pacing was so good. I cannot wait for the 5th book. The Way of Kings starts off, it is all the books are a multiple POV series. We follow several different characters, and it is centered in a world that is just completely ravaged by war and the environment. There are crazy storms that go through the land, and the landscape and the way that they build their homes are completely adapted to the fact that these storms come through all the time and completely devastate things. And they're in a constant cycle of war where their whole society gets ravaged and then they have to rebuild again after several thousand years. It just continues on and on. The magic system in this is really interesting, and it consists around various people bonding with these kind of spiritual beings called Spren, and it's their relationship with the Spren that gives them these magical abilities. So in The Way of Kings, we follow a slave who becomes a soldier, and he will do anything to protect his fellow men. We follow a young girl who is seeking to apprentice to be a scholar to a princess in the land, but she's also looking to steal something important to help her family. And then we follow an old, hard, seasoned soldier who's having these visions, and he's trying to figure out if he has gone insane or if he is being given some special knowledge that will help them in the war. Ultimately, I would say what The Way of Kings is about especially is honor and what it is to be an honorable person. The 5th book in this series doesn't come out until about 2023, and I don't know how I'm going to wait that long, but I will, and I know it will be so worth it. All right, so those are my favorite books of 2020. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you all next time. Bye.